This is the Nephew SDK meeting on February 13th, 2024. Okay. Before we get started, anyone has any other agenda items that they want to discuss? Okay, cool. You guys can see my screen, right? Oh, Windows. I'm assuming
yes,
that's it.
we can. Yeah.
Okay.
I was waiting for the unmute button. Yes. I was searching.
Okay, so obviously no one volunteered from last week. So the first order of business obviously is hopefully some folks would be interested to get the pieces, to get some of the items. Some of the things that I moved, I took this guy out of R3 because what we're asking is there's no clear use case at this point. So it's pretty low priority. It may even be detached from this because this is R3. But anyway, so that's one. And another one is I added this, which is you want to get so again, R3, we're looking for Helm onboarding. So the idea is to generate the values.yaml to be fed into whatever Helm execution engine we're using. And then last week, the community is very strong on making sure that we can find a way to do this without requiring coding, which is great. And so I put that in as one of the tasks. I actually spent about an hour or two last night looking at crossplane, which was suggested by Vim. It wasn't obvious to me. It's still not very obvious to me that how that could be done by crossplane, which is basically a KCC-like thing. They're taking a CLD northbound and map it into some sort of API by different providers. I know there's a natural translation logic, transformation logic. They also want to map your execution, your provider execution APIs and things into a Kubernetes object, managed objects that they call it. But then it wasn't, to me, it isn't too trivial. Even if we are leveraging that. Let's say, for example, we write a Nephew provider that actually does values.yaml generation. This is our config map or other types of objects. This is still not, I don't know if it's like user friendly per se. So I mean, I'm open for folks to explore. So I'm putting that in as a task. But then I haven't done anything in terms of like actually doing the work. So I don't want to say yes or no, or it's not me to say yes or no anyway. I do want to explore ways to do that, and then, because it's definitely cool to not asking people to compile just the business logic mapping of NF deployment plus your vendor extension into a values.yaml. That seems like something that you should be able to do like statically. Something simplistic like GVK, or NF deployment plus GVK, and then and submit another GVK, and then we can write something to actually do that mapping.
So I have a thought about that. There's you can take a values.yaml and just turn it into a CRD, right? A bunch of properties, right?
Yeah,
that's kind of the initial thought. But then the question is, okay, how do you fill them all? And one, I think there are two ways to consider here. One is pushing it, right? Which is how we do it right now. You would have some sort of ket function that generates that, right? And takes whatever it needs from the various inputs that it has from our normal models, right? Plus the extensions. Another approach that I've used in two places is a pull model. That is, you have some expression language built in, right? So when you create the CR, rather than just give it values, you give it some sort of expression that takes that value from somewhere else. And now kept supports it, right? Right, kept allows internal support for functions in some cases. There's kind of the general sorry, not kept. I meant customize. Right?
Yeah, Cab actually was designed to take the code out of it.
Customize with a K. Yeah, kept is the first example. This is the second example. So customize with a K is very much based on that, right? It uses the Go expression language that's used a lot actually in Kubernetes, and yeah, it could be a combination of both, right?
You're basically asking the developers to write the mapping into expressive language. And then we just kind of invoke customize and generates the values.yaml.
No, I'm not saying use customize. No, I'm saying just use, if we bake it into as a feature of Nefio somewhere, right, in specialization, right? So it could be actually a kept function that evaluates these expressions, right? So the point is that when you write that CR and include it in a package, you don't have to rely on kept functions to do everything, because that's kind of mysterious. You don't see it. That's inside the Go code somewhere. You can actually express it right there in the text, right, through special strings that have these curly brackets, right? If you use customize, you know how it looks. So there could be a kept function that runs through that and evaluates those expressions and pulling the data, right? So it's more, I think, expressive and part of the package itself, and not something mysterious that's hard-coded into Go code somewhere, and you just assume it works. And again, it could be a combination of both. There could be some aspects that are filled behind the scenes, and some aspects that might be better exposed to the user, to the architect. Sorry. Anyway, these are two thoughts. I can flesh this out a little bit more. If
that would be great to put on the issues, because I wonder if this is simpler, because now you're asking the developers to write a new language in a way to show what the mapping actually looks like.
Yeah,
which is fine. I mean, just want to get the vendor communities to see whether or not this is more user friendly.
Well, I have a POC for this already. It's part of the TKO POC. So when I show it, that POC has so much stuff in it. I basically threw in everything that I could think of to experiment with into one place. So I can highlight that specifically, maybe in a meeting here, and just demo it and show how that expression language works. I use it exactly for this purpose, to pull things into Helm values. So I'll show you. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So
I have something as well that I can show. It's similar to that. Yeah.
Okay, good. So we don't have
which I'm using for NF2Infra, by the way. So it's but it's so my thing is basically based on Terraform. So it's basically using Terraform because it's basically that.
Okay. Yeah.
So it sounds like for everything, Tal and Wim always, like they say, we have an app for that. So so Tal and Wim say we have a POC for that.
Yeah,
I can demo it right now if you want.
Yeah, exactly.
If you want.
Amazing, Wim and Tal. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Well, Wim, but seriously, let's maybe next SDK session we should both demo and just show that.
No, because
if it works, then we can.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
So the thing is, right now, I mean, I'm almost right. No, it's still a bit of work, but I can do specialization without doing any code, basically.
Awesome.
Yep.
So you mean to say, like, without writing any function?
I mean, you have to write the mappings, right? But
the vendor, the business logic is from the developers, so they have to map the business logic. But then,
but the nice thing is also,
which ones? Is it the architects or the programmers doing Go?
So in this case, it's for us. For SDKs for vendors. Yeah.
In this case, it's basically, I mean, what you do is you map a value from the input to somewhere, right? So it's kind of very simple, and you have functions that. So I'm using cell as a way to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. The thing is that, those expression languages, as rich as they are, I don't think I don't think they're good for all use cases, right? Because sometimes the values of YAML versus our CRDs have enormous gaps between them. It's not just mapping individual or even calculating them in different ways. You probably need a program and some business logic to do that, including, by the way, getting data from external sources, right? Not everything always could be available in the package.
I mean, what's that? Let's kick it off with something simpler.
Yeah.
First. So the nice thing with the Terraform logic is that you can even build these providers that basically do that. So and it's also support mixins and stuff like that. So it's actually I mean, there's still a bit of work to make this complete, but there it has very nice properties.
Yeah, well, not nice to have that, because I would like to avoid using crossplane. It looks very complicated. Go
Yeah,
ahead, Liam.
crossplane. See, I pointed you
Okay,
to that,
sorry.
Stephen, because that's something that is there, right, and is used.
Yeah. No, I looked. It's the purpose wasn't that. So if you want to use it to do that, it's actually it looks very either overkilled or a little complicated. But yeah, I'm glad you guys have solutions, because that, you know, the crossplane I'm very iffy on. Yeah, but sorry. Go ahead, Liam.
So just I guess it'd be great to see Tal and Henrik's get presentation and to get the status updates, because the sooner we get that into stuff, I know it's not really the topic of this meeting, but the sooner we can get that into R3, the better we have all of eyes on it. You know?
Yeah. My plan was not for we can whether we can do it in R3 is a bit of a different conversation.
Yeah, okay, maybe that's fine too, maybe. Yeah, no.
I think we first have to show what it can do, right, and then we can see how to.
Yeah. Okay, that's actually that sounds like a very good plan. Maybe we can do a POC or something in R3.
Yeah, no. So logistic. I mean, before we go to the volunteers, logistic. I think the community wants us to first build this end-to-end use case on POC as a POC. So I'll after this meeting, I'll create a with Bala's permission, I'll create a repo on Nephew experimental, and then we'll do the first level integrations, or at least up to ONE Summit, our integrations on that repo first, before moving into the Nephew SDK repo on Project Nephew OS project. Cool.
The only thing that I wanted to say is that. I mean, my focus right now is on the specialization side and NF2 infra to leverage this.
Okay.
So the implementation to use it within a controller or just on a package will be a bit different. I mean, there will be some subtleties around it, because you have to basically. I mean, I've worked on something before, but at the moment I'm focused really on running it within the package stuff, right? And to sort out all the dependencies and stuff like that. So I'm focused on that. So what I'm trying to say is that the consumption, right? So the syntax will be the same, but the way in the package you actually just run it as a pipeline, right? So you basically it runs independently. Here you have to tie it to the watches of the control runtime. So there is a bit of different work involved. That it's not a rocket science, but you actually are pretty deep. For people who are familiar, you are pretty deep into you need to go pretty deep into controller runtime code to understand how to do that.
So one thing I wanted to say, that now we are getting into the R3 things. I know there's a lot of wish list coming from the SIG architecture, which is obviously this is one of that, right? SDK, SA, and observability, and RAM. I think these are the three major stories along with modeling. At the same time, from a SIG automation perspective, like we have recognized at least two main things so far, at least to my knowledge. One is the NF2 infra that you are bringing up, Wim. That is one thing. Probably that's kind of a fundamental working piece. And also, Stephen, like we discussed yesterday, that abstract model for infrastructure.
Yeah, the cluster. Yeah. I'm still at the point where I think Nephew should have something simpler instead of the full ORAN thing. But then we can talk about that on Slack.
Yes. So whatever that is. So what I'm saying is probably we need to do those things as well. I think probably these two, as we consider the main items, we should also include these two items for R3, because it's time at this point of time. We have simplified the NF deployment. In R2, probably it's time to simplify the infrastructure deployment. So I think we should consider these as a high priority work streams for R2.
Yeah, I can take that one. I mean, if you have an issue, I can take that.
Sure. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think we just want to make sure that when we go to the TSC, we also need to tell them, along with this, we have these things also. Cool. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll be happily waiting for Tal and Wim to give us a demo next week. Until then, let's hopefully folks are interested to do things. the CLI, sorry to say that I haven't reached out to the operator SDK people. I can write out what I investigated on the Cube Builder. That's also based on operator SDK. That the idea is so the reason why operator SDK wraps Cube Builder is according to a blog that I was reading, is because one of operator SDK's goal is to have something that gets started by Cube Builder, and then they can take over the same workspace, and then still use the same CLI syntax to continue. Like let's say you create an API on a on a workspace that is actually built out by Cube Builder. So this is not necessarily a requirement for us, but it's kind of nice to have. So if we can do that on a Cube Builder, that's already a well-known thing that we can kind of replicate from Operator SDK. If we want to leverage Operator SDK, I have not figured out how to do that yet. But then the one major benefit, obviously, is you have the OLM thing to do lifecycle management of operators that you can just leverage. And although we have our lifecycle management from Nephiel too, and then B, it has Ansible support, which again, there's no use case for it yet, so I don't want to say this is a hard requirement. But in any case, the CLI is something you should be able to leverage from the framework. Cube Builder CLI is a Go module that you can just use, and then add and because we need to allow vendors to add their own CLDs, and that's a good starting point there, because the syntax would be very consistent across Cube Builder, Operator SDK, and Nephiel SDK. So that's the idea. But then if you use the Cube Builder part, correspondingly, you have to write quite a bit of code. So this is if the decision is to do Cube Builder, then you do have to write some code. And if anyone interested.
So Steve, are you making opinion here that we should?
No, so I can write about what I investigated so far.
Okay.
And I would encourage whoever wants to take on this to also reach out to Operator SDK. I haven't done it. Sorry about that. Up to last week, I was busy doing something else.
Got it. So obviously, as a Red Hat, probably if we use Operator SDK here, that would be good. Yeah, that's.
There's certain benefits. I just want to see how easy it is on one side versus the other.
Definitely, the Ansible one, I can definitely see for some of the infra pieces how that can be useful to write a simple Ansible operator. And with that said, even I have not looked into this for a while now. I can bring if you think that's helpful. I also said the last time too, but I did not follow up on that. But do you think, Stephen, that should I bring somebody?
Yeah, that would be helpful. So we'll know explicitly how do we like replace Operator SDK with Nephiel SDK, and still leverage the same syntax and structure, and then allow us to add extensions. So that's the only thing. Otherwise, if the core says Operator SDK, I would be perfectly fine with that.
Okay, cool.
Just so Operator SDK's core is Cube Builder.
Yes,
Operator
exactly.
SDK
It's built on.
They're also perfectly fine with that too. So
it's built on Cube Builder, and it gives us a leverage with multiple options, such as Ansible, like you said. Yeah. So I'll talk to you internally.
And from Ericsson, I think I would also be interested in chipping in on this one, because we have been doing something similar, talking, but it was based mainly on the Operator SDK. It was not focusing on the Cube Builder itself. So if there's need for help in here, I would be happy to chip in.
Oh, cool. Thanks,
Teacher. Yeah. The other thing is it has some community, so around it for them. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So at the very least, additional, if you can provide findings and things in the issue, that'd be great. Obviously, the really amazing thing would be just take the issues. would be great.
Yeah. Okay.
Again, it's up to you guys. That's one. So great. So far we have some directions on this. I'm guessing whatever. So Vim and Tao maybe correct me on this. I'm guessing no matter what you do on the mapping, we still need some sort of dummy NF deployment reconciler, right?
If you do the thing that I'm working on, no. I mean, it will be hidden.
Okay.
It will be created for you. I mean, it's
okay.
It
so you have something. So that's the thing. So something needs to create something, a reconciler that listens to that watches NF deployment. So you're generating that.
So the way it works, the way this would work is what you do is you basically have your business logic, if you will, right? Which is a set of expressions.
Yeah.
And you basically tie that to NF deployment, right? So basically you say NF deployment does this, and the first thing it does, it basically says, if provider is me, I will do the rest of the logic. If not, go to hell, right? I'm not interested in this yet.
Do we also, so one possible use case that I could see, in addition to the mapping, does it generate the code so that people can actually go in and change it too? Because we want to make it easier. So majority of the use cases generates this and done.
Yes.
But then there's the cases where maybe some vendors will have to go in and say, oh, I would like to add some logic to the reconciler. So is the code, let's say Go code, is the Go code generated and sitting on the workspace so people can actually go in and modify it?
I mean, if you look how the reconciler code works under the hood of the operator SDK, right? So you're tied to a watch, basically, right?
Yeah.
A watch of a specific GVK, right? And so that's so you have a for, you have the own, and you have the watches itself, right? Each of them are tied to a watch inside of the Kubernetes logic. The way, the system that I'm working on works is that in order to reach out for example, sometimes you need to get access to additional resources within the cluster, right? So there is a provider plugin that takes care of that.
I see. Okay, so that's nice. Yeah. So I just want to make sure it's extensible, so they don't just do static stuff, and then they can change the reconciler. Yeah,
the provider is code, right? But given that everything is KRM, instead of Terraform, where you have to write 100 providers or 1,000 providers, here you only have to write one.
Okay.
And that's already there, right? So in other words, you get every KRM out of the box.
Yeah. So we can, if we use that, then we can probably get that for free. Then we'll have a reconciler already running as part of that package, I guess.
Yes, yeah, but so
at that point they would still need to build and push it to Docker Hub and all that stuff, right? So this is still users.
So there will be a base image in this case. So there's a base image that you will use, right, to spin up. So there's kind of like the same as crossplane works at the end of the day, and then you add your expression file and it then executes.
Okay.
And you can tie the expressions. You can basically have so you can have a delete or a create, and so you basically have multiple. So it's not one big business logic; it can be multiple.
Okay. Well, we'll look at a demo and see how it is. But it seems like this one ties.
In the demo, I will not show all of that yet. But
okay. Well, I mean, if there needs to be development effort from the SDK team, we should also have chipped in to help out.
I have some code that does that, but it's not, the two are not tied together yet.
Yeah.
So because
our need is basically generates a operator that would also
That's why I'm saying is at the moment my focus is not really on this use case, but it's I think the let's say framework itself can be leveraged, or it was always in mind to leverage that also.
Okay. That's what I'm saying. So if that, because we need it for operators, but so if you check it into Nephew somewhere, then we can hopefully someone would be coming in and help out to make sure that works on the operator side. Go ahead, Tal. Sorry.
I just want to, I posted on the chat a while ago, I showed a demo of exactly that, right? A single operator, it was Kplug, if you remember it. A single operator that you can extend with these plugins, right, or providers, as Wim calls them, right? So they would contain the business logic. They can be written in any language, and they can be deployed as their own pods, right? Not controllers. Remember, not everything in Kubernetes has to be controllers. So it could be just something that sits there and waits for the main operator to delegate work to it, right? It does the logic and returns the result. or actually does
gRPC, right? I think
in
the backend.
I use gRPC. I actually used, there's a pretty nice implementation from HashiCorp that allows gRPC to use locally as well, kind of like DLLs, right? Using sockets. So you could, if you support gRPC in your plugin, you can run it either locally in the same pod or in a separate pod, right, over a network. So you can do both, right? So yeah, we have discussed this, and there are actually solutions out there that do this, having one operator for everybody, right? Instead of everybody, like we developed a complete operator for Free5GC and for OAI, and they're completely different code bases, right? But there's so much shared logic, right? So the idea is that there could be one operator and just delegate certain reconciliation tasks, and they can be very fine-tuned to the kind of work that Nefio does with NFs, right? So they can be really tuned to our CRDs plus the extensions, right? To do exactly what needs to be done for those, right? So not something generic, but something very Nefio-centric operator, right? With Nefio-centric plugins, right? For things like Multis extensions, for example, right? Calculating or generating NADs, things like that. So it could be something very opinionated for Nefio, right? Rather than a generic platform. And, you know, just in the background, there's a discussion going on for a long time about VNFMs and saying, hey, could Nefio finally be the product that gives us a GVNFM, right? A generic VNFM where, you know, it's one base of code and people just insert their own special logic, right? So this could be it, right? I'm being very careful at putting it there. But
when we started Tacker, we had that vision.
Yeah, it's a lot, very long. When I say long conversation, many year conversation, right? And whether that term even means a lot anymore is another question.
That's true.
Point being, we could do something here that you know, it's a step beyond the what is it called? The runtime. What's the core of the operator SDK? The controller runtime.
Controller runtime, yeah.
Right. So the controller runtime is kind of like a framework for doing a lot of the internal work for you and just delegating logic, but it's all Go based, right? The idea is that you provide a reconcile function. And there have been attempts to make that, you know, delegated so you can move it into, say, Python. But at the same time, we know that you know, you're still getting the complete reconciliation function. So you still have to flesh out all that business logic. So the point is, can we break it down into things that are even more granular, right? Rather than having, here's a reconciliation function, do it. You still have to do all that business logic for reconciliation, right? So we can divide it into even more, you know, specific aspects that you can delegate, right? So the technology is there, you know, I show that it's possible. There are a lot of other efforts that show other similar things. The question is design here, you know, what do we actually delegate? You know, what are those functions, those pieces that could be implemented with a separate script in Python or whatever, right? I think this is a very, very useful approach, right? We're not stopping people from creating an operator by themselves, right? We always say the Nefio SDK is not required. You can go and write an operator using operator SDK or anything else, and we could potentially
we've done it in our one now too, basically.
But you know, we could potentially have some tooling to make that a little bit easier, like dealing with the CRDs and stuff. But I think at the same time, we can do something like this, you know, something more, we do all the work and you just insert the logic kind of thing. And when I say insert the logic, it's not like creating a skeleton code base that you fill in, but really just creating a pod that runs and exposes gRPC, and that's it, right? Not having to deal with anything really specific to Kubernetes in terms of creating that business logic.
Is it really that important in this first go at it to support multiple languages?
No, I think
that far to give support to provide the business logic in Python or in some other language. Would it not be simpler to start off with just Go in this first?
Whether Go is simpler than Python, right? Or whether it's simpler for us. First of all, we already support Python, right? We have all of OAI written in Python, right? I think my point is that it's a freebie. It doesn't matter. Any language has a gRPC server. So it doesn't have to be Python. It could be anything. If you can create a gRPC server, then choose whatever language you want. You prefer Ruby, you prefer Java, you can do that as well. It's kind of a freebie created through decoupling, right? Which is one of the powerful aspects of decoupling that I keep talking about. Yeah, I mean, we can provide examples in Python just to be nice, showing in a specific language, but the technology itself could work with anything. And if somebody wants to contribute, say, a Java little framework to make it easier, they can do that too. But it's a good question too, right, that I keep raising. How important is support for other languages? In my personal opinion, it should be high priority for us. I think having to use Go to get into Nefio is a blocker. This is something I heard from vendors, right? But yeah, that's an issue, I think, separate issue from this technology specifically, but it is worth discussing.
Well, it was a blocker when we started. I don't know, tens of thousands of lines later, I guess it turns out it's not much of a blocker. But yeah, I could understand. Obviously, right now we're addressing directly to vendors, and then their opinion matters in this case. I would like to ask someone to take on this so that they can look at Tau and Vim solutions and make a decision, or investigate something else and make a decision. This plus the business logic, I think they're very related. So, anyone interested?
So one question I wanted to ask Stephen: when we do the operator SDK or the QBuilder, it will also generate a dummy decontroller, right? Controller.
That's true. That's right. But then,
Right.
well, so yes and no. So you can, yes, if you to CLD you created. So the first thing you do is create API, right? So if you create that CLD and then you say I want a controller, then that controller is a reconciler for that CLD.
Yeah.
So for us, the Nefio SDK, at least in one major mode of operations, which is somewhat different, is that we already know which CL you're going to be watching. Your reconciler is going to be against NF deployment. So the vendor extension CLD that you're going to create, practically speaking, they have no controllers. So you just write code to process them.
I think NF deployment is one. For example, if you're talking about other CRDs, for example, the cluster creation, just we talked about. So if we are going to use this for that also, for example, we may not. For example, we may end up with one operator with
that could be one way. So you have multiple reconcilers to reconcile.
Yes.
But then the way we do it right now is the vendor extensions, we're going to put it into config ref or parameters ref, and then the reconciler of NF deployment parses that and then invoke whatever functions to process them. We do not. That said, those resources are in the package, so they were applied. They will be applied to the workload clusters. So if you create controllers which watches them, so the problem for watching them would be they would not be the watching controllers of those vendor extension CLs would not necessarily have an association with the NF deployment that comes in. So that's why we want to drive it from NF deployment, and then so you know the reference of the NF deployment that you're dealing with. So for example, if you have to take the IP address and VLANs from NF deployment plus the extension stuff for you to generate values.yaml, then you're driving it from the NF deployment side instead of waking up and then reading the your own extension CL, and then fill up some values, but then you have no reference to which NF deployment you're looking at. So I mean that's one major use case that's the reason why we're watching NF deployment.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And anyway, so same question. Anyone here? So this person will be responsible for evaluating VIMs and Tau solutions, and then give recommendations, I guess, to the community.
Can we add that as a comment maybe in the studio?
Okay.
We already added that.
Yeah. So this and the other one that I just filed today, 512, I think, are things where we'll look at two solutions that are provided by community members now, and then one responsible person will be taking on this to be used for our L3 POC, if you will. Well, our POC to L3, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll add in a comment.
Yeah.
So this is probably the same thing as one. This is what I'm hoping anyway, that this is basically the CLI extensions. That if you use CLI and wrap like Operator SDK, you will be able to handle vendor extensions. We just, as we said earlier, we just won't create controllers for the vendor extensions. And then we will know those logic needs to be attached to an NF deployment, which is already there, I think, for specializers. So I think this is the same as, this is basically the same as 501 in 500 in terms of work. Package. So I think Wim talked about he has a
Yeah, so the tool that I am using, Steven, does this also, by the way. So I changed, so I learned from CapGen. So the tool, so the system or the framework that I have can actually be used also for this.
Okay.
It's multi-purpose. So I designed it for package generation, specialization, controller runtime, and even offline. It's basically it's syntactically what Terraform does, but only with KRM.
And then, so the options of creating both the operator package and the NF package, is that an option? Because I'm not just creating one package. When I'm writing the operator,
any package you want with this tool, right? So the business logic is basically you say I want this KRM and you want transformation. You want to probably need the provider plugin to say I want to fetch these KRM resources from this place. So for that you might have to. For example, if you are going outside of KRM, right? So for example, you say I want to get a resource from Git or something like that. Therefore, you have to probably write an own provider to do that, right?
Okay.
But the tool itself,
but there's still a second package. There's still a second package where the CLD generated by the vendors, the vendor extension CLDs. We'll have to create some vendor CL, the dummy templates, and then that becomes part of the NF package. So so that you can also just execute that basically. So I'm asking.
Yeah, so you can fetch that CRD and generate something out of that, right? So that's also
okay.
I haven't implemented all of that, but so it's fairly straightforward to do those type of things.
No. Again, whoever takes on that obviously would either wait for them to implement or just go ahead and implement it on top.
The idea is
that's an SDK need.
Yeah,
that's a need for SDK. More than whatever you.
The challenge will be to do all of that in R3. That will be a bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it all depends on this, then obviously you have to expose your code as early as possible so we can start building on top of it.
Yes.
Okay. So package volunteers. I mean, you can leverage you can link all of that together by saying that as a general story. Do you want to are you taking Wim's tools to do X, Y, A, B, and Z, all three of these little things that we're doing?
Or other alternatives, right? I mean, if
and then you can do alternatives to for any of the A, B, and Z, or all A, B, and Z. You can use an alternative. So we'll like to get someone to sign on. And then the Flux POC, any volunteers? I think that's. I think Fiacra talked about. You haven't done it in terms of the FreeFi-GC yet, right? You've done it on a test application.
Yeah, it was more on a test package. Yeah. But I think we tried the FreeFi-GC charts at one point, but I'd have to go back over my notes if you like.
Yeah. So if we can update the issues to see whether or not there's actually issues to do this, then we can go from there. So
what's going to happen
the output
with Flux?
Sorry. We'll do with something. Flux. I know the company behind Flux is out of business, but then Flux seems to be more matching at this point in terms of generating values.yaml, having the charts on the Git repo, and basically using a CLD to drive what chart it's supposed to read. So those are some of the basic requirements that we agree on, I guess, as a community.
I think where I see Flux excel is all the hook support of Helm, right? So they are the only one that have that. All the rest, I think, have all the Helm stuff, but not the hooks. I think I'm not sure whether that's correct, but that's my view of the world at the moment.
That's what I was told, actually, too. I haven't. Well, I mean, the FreeFileGC Helm charts are not really having all the Helm plugins and things. So I mean, I haven't exercised that. And in fact, actually, the only thing I tried was Operator SDK, not Helm, not Flux. So I don't
they
know.
They all have a Helm plugin, as far as I understand, Stephen. So even config sync and Argo, they all have a Helm plugin. But if you go to the Helm hooks, that part is only available in Flux, I think. But I'm not sure whether I'm right. But
I mean,
yeah,
so the idea is we. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your task.
No. So I'm just saying that the execution of invoking Helm install basically would have to be done by someone, and then that someone needs to be pulling on the Git repo. We have to, because it's Git repo, we have to somehow able to tell them this is the chart that we're looking at, and then able to somehow present them with values.yaml that we generate based on the business logic. So Flux kind of check all those boxes. That's all it is for me. I haven't heard a lot of things from vendors community that they want to extensively use the hooks. In a way, we would like to discourage that anyway. So I mean, that's probably not the decision point. Although I'm open for vendor communities to give feedback.
We do have some internal things that we were doing where a lot of Helm charts actually do use Helm hooks. And it has been one of the stumbling pain points because only Flux supports it, and there's no other solution outside of it, at least not yet.
So that's I mean, again, for POC or for R3 reference implementation, I think Flux checks all the boxes, so might as well just use Flux. If it helps different vendors' Helm charts, existing Helm charts, to minimize changes, that would be a great added bonus. Although again, and obviously Nephew long term would like to encourage you to do all your day 2 using an operator.
So Stephen, my question was, since you said the ViewWorks is going out of business, what is the repercussions of that? Is it will Flux continue to live on in the community?
So our 3, like anything else we've done, is using Flux would be just a reference. The operator SDK or Nephew operator framework, let's put it even more, Helm onboarding for Nephew will not make Flux a requirement, no matter what we do as a reference implementations. So if the idea is, I remember 2 meetings ago, the community to agree on the execution engine, which is what I call this so far in terms of term. The Helm chart execution engine is something where you have to encode in your package by saying that I have a dependencies on that, and then NF to infra dependencies controller or whatever they call them would be dynamically fetch that and install it into workload cluster. So this piece is not a required piece for Helm onboarding. What we do require is Helm. We do at least recommend to users that the Helm charts to be copy and loaded onto a Git repo that is accessible by the workload clusters, and we'll have a Nephew CL, if you will, that would allow you to encode the location of the repos and the chart and the revision of the chart and so on. So those things are what we'll probably mandate, but then not the execution engine. So if you replace Flux with, for instance, Helm directly, plus something that fetch from Git, that would be fine. A controller that does like Helm on the back end and also use like a Git fetch and Git clone or whatever, that would be okay. So that Flux is not a requirement. So, but then for this POC, it seems to check all the boxes. It probably is a good thing to use, just to expedite the process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that would never be a requirement. We don't want to mandate people to use a particular Helm engine. So I'm guessing this sort of is Fiacre, since he's been working on that.
Yeah, this is the thing. If you start
is it
working
okay with
on it, you own it.
Yeah, using Helm to see if we can deploy this FreeFileGC, and then if you can, please like publish the config map. So this would become the things that we want to do in terms of generating the values.yaml.
Yeah, we can have a look. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So this is generating the FreeFileGC operators using SDK. That should be the whoever is doing this. By the time Fiacre is done with the FreeFileGC onboarding using Flux, if it's doable. By the time the idea is by the time we get to this, whoever is doing this is just writing the mapping and then finished, and then generating some packages. So it should be very simple work. And I'll probably take it myself then, if there's anything. So I do want to see if this is more like integration work at the end to make sure that I can take the FreeFileGC Helm charts and run it through the integrated Matthew SDK, and it generates the operator and the NF package for FreeFileGC. So I can do that. That I can do if it's really as easy as it is. And I could critique whether or not it's as easy as it is, and then recommend improvements as we go. This I dump it into non-L3, so forget it. If we see a use case, that would be great to think about how to add that. I don't think we've seen it yet at this point. And then, as we said, the last one and pretty much similar to the other ones. So A, B, and C is the reconciler, the package generations, and the business logic. So the idea is right now, so far, what Wim told us is he has the tools that may be able to satisfy all three with additional extensions and additions to the tools. We can have three different people looking at these three different areas and come back and see, recommend that maybe Wim's tools can do them or not. But then, but if not, then, if everyone said, yeah, let's use Vim's, then Vim's tools plus whatever we have to develop as the SDK team would be able to satisfy all three of those. Yeah, go ahead, Bala.
Yeah, sorry, maybe a very basic question, maybe very naive also, sorry. In the previous one, the FreeFileGC operator via SDK, the way I understand is obviously we start with enough deployment, CR. In general, I'm talking about how we work today.
Yeah. And
then it goes through the specialization pipeline and it creates a CR into the workload cluster repo.
Yeah.
And then that cluster.
So me as a human who understands the FreeFileGC Helm charts, which I don't, but then it's there, would come in and say, oh, NF deployment is this. In order for me to generate the values.yaml for my FreeFileGC, all the NFs actually, I need or individual NFs, so UPF, SMF, and AMF. I need this additional things. So those things becomes, so I define those structures through this Nephew SDK. So now the CLDs for this extension structures plus the dummy CLs that will be generated out of those are created. And then I go into some sort of tools and tell me I'm mapping NF deployment interface IPv6, IPv4 address to my values.yaml, blah, blah, blah. I don't actually wrote it. And I think maybe PFCP, blah, some N4 things. And then I map it into that values.yaml field, and then it generates the business logic, whatever form it is. And then I push that in, and then I say, hey, I have this in my Docker Hub now. So let's encode that into a deployment object. So generates a operator package that would includes both all the extension CLDs which version of NF deployments I'm going to use, and pointing to this operator image in some sort of registry as a path. And then it also generates the second package, which contains the FreeFiGC extension CLs, the NF deployment CL, and I would think that would pretty much be it. And then I can load the first one to make sure that the operator comes up, and then I can load the second one to deploy whatever NF I want to deploy. So that's the I should only do those. And then if I have to do a lot more, then we have to sort of evaluate how it goes.
Okay. So basically, you're taking the Helm charts and
oh yeah, and I'm also responsible to just load the Helm charts into a Git repo, and then specify that as part of the input, I guess, on the deployment that I'm using this particular Helm charts.
Okay. Thank you.
But then, and by then, I shouldn't have to bring up flux. I shouldn't have to do. I shouldn't have. I have to bring up operators by loading the package, but I don't have to like bring it up physically. I don't have to apply the deployment. And then someone will have to tell me this is working. And one logic that isn't there yet. The status field. So if we use all this business logic, is there some way to encode how we fill out the status? So that's actually a question for Vim.
Yes, yeah, you can also specify that, right?
Okay. If that's the only piece that has to write code, that's also okay. We just want to know. That doesn't seem very trivial, actually, to specify an expressive language.
I mean, you based on what you get, based on an event that you get, you update it, right?
Well, so the
devil is always in the detail, of course, right? But
yes.
Yeah.
So FreeFiGC is simple. There's the pod coming up, great. But then I'm guessing we have vendor community here. So the vendors will be coming in, and they have what, 8 pods, 6 pods, 10 pods to make up one UPF. It will, and then they probably will be able to internally ensure that communication is happening. The basic configuration has been applied, and then all the connectivities and things are done. So I think that piece of logic probably is.
Yeah. So that's a different. So you have to split that. You have to look at it from a different. We have to look at all the different use cases.
Yes.
I think when you go into, I would say, more of this closed loop type of stuff, right? Which I call right. You probably might have to write some code there, right? So that's where I think. So you have to split it up. But for example, what I'm doing a lot these days is I myself is that I split the reconciler into pieces, right? So you, for example, because you can attach multiple reconcilers to the same object, right? Each doing a specific thing. So for example, what I'm typically doing, I mean, and it's up for discussion, is one is basically creating all the artifacts that are depending on you, right? For example, in this case, the Helm chart, right? But there could be additional ones, right? And there is another one that basically says, okay, it looks at the statuses of all of these things, and he is basically responsible for updating specific status objects within that same CR. It doesn't have to be one big reconciliation loop. You can split them up into pieces as long as you basically ensure that you segment who is taking care of what.
Well,
you see?
Usually we want, I mean, best practice, I guess. We want only one operators per clusters to own a particular resource. But anyway.
Yes, but so what I'm trying to say is that, for example, I mean,
many people can watch, but then ownership, pretty much, we want to kind of narrow it down to one, precisely for the reason.
We have to look into the details. But what I'm trying to say is, if you really do service assurance type of stuff, right? You somehow, for example, updating a replica set to say I need 5 pods and stuff like that. That's easy, right? So that's easy peasy.
Yeah.
The question, because then you basically say, okay, I need 5 pods. I just read the status and you update a field, right? So that's easy. What I'm trying to get to is, if it's really more complicated logic, then you have to see whether you don't have to write code at some point, right? So there's a limit to this expression stuff.
Yeah, of course, yeah. That's what I'm saying. The status field seems like at least for L3 is a code that needs to be added.
No, status
to,
can be so like really saying whether it worked or didn't work, right? That you can easily update, because at the end of the day you execute. Actually, you execute a DAG, right? So that's how the thing works. So you execute a DAG under the hood, and depending on where you can already get an error code from it to see whether you succeeded or not, right? So we basically update the status of the ready condition. So that's kind of out of the box that you get for it. And then you can basically say, as when you succeed or didn't succeed, you can, for example, determine a list and say how many entries based on how many pods you have, and then you update an entry into that. So it's also easy. And just there might be scenarios where it becomes more complicated, is what I'm trying to say, where potentially real code is needed. And but we have to. That's we will find that out based on experimentation. I guess.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. I mean, our status may change too because of SAA requirements. Who knows? But let's see how it goes.
Yes.
Okay. So that's pretty much it. I mean, again, offline, hopefully folks can volunteer. Those 3 major items that we have to evaluate based on Tao and Vim's demos and suggestions. I definitely would like someone to take a look.
Stephen, I mean, if it's not already there, probably can you also add the link to the document that you presented, right?
Oh yeah,
this epic.
Yeah. I can link
so
it
that
to
somebody can
the
go
epic,
to this place and then see the documentation, understand the whole thing, end-to-end thing. And
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much.
I'll do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So thank you. So it's on time. And then next week, as we said, the agenda would definitely be just Tal and Vim's demos, and then see how it fits into this 3 particular use case. Cool.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. 1 minute over. So if there's nothing else, so have a good day.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.